Greetings, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Kentucky Teachers in the Know Ed Talk. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Miss Allison Sloan. Allison, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Jamie. It's been a while since we've done one of these. We've been a little busy, and I'm glad to be back on the screen with you.
Glad to be back as well. Lots of things always happening in education. We got two awesome guests. Let's drop them in and introduce them to everyone. How's that?
Sounds great. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome to the show with us tonight. We've got Dr. Rhonda Caldwell, KASA Executive Director. That is the Kentucky Association of School Administrators, for those of you that don't know. And then we have Dr. Meinschein, I said it correctly, I'm proud of myself, who is the Superintendent of Livingston County Schools. Welcome to the show with us tonight on Ed Talk. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much, Jamie and Allison, for hosting us tonight. We're excited to be here.
Well, and I appreciate the awesome guest comment, so thanks.
Yes, wonderful. Well, Rhonda, we're going to start with you. If you kind of introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do, and then we'll go to Dr. Meinschein.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the best introduction of myself is first and foremost to begin with, I am a longtime starch public education supporter with background at the school district level and at KASA, the School Administrators Association, for more than 20 years now. And currently I serve as our executive director. And that work is very focused on supports and services, benefits for our school leaders. There are 3,400 members who voluntarily belong to KASA. And we provide services that are professional development and growth, as well as legal services and also advocacy, the big topic for us to discuss tonight.
Yes, definitely. Advocacy is where we are and what we're interested in and that topic. So Dr. Meinstein, yes, said it. Did I say it correctly? Meinstein. I got close that time. You have to give me some.
Go with David.
There you go, David. How about that? I knew I butchered at some point. David, would you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of how you got to become superintendent of Livingston County Schools?
My name is David Meinschein, and this is my 23rd year in education. I was sitting counting while you were speaking. I've had a different path to education. After college, I was commissioned as an officer in the United States Army. I served in the 101st Airborne Division and the 25th Infantry Division. I left the military and I went to work for a Fortune 500 company first, and then found my way to San Jose to work for a startup telecommunications company. Then found my way into education. I say that only to say I think today what we all do is more important than anything I've ever done in my life. That's changed the minds and hearts of students and to educate them. I am the superintendent of Livingston County. This is my third year being here. I came here by way of Atlanta, Georgia. I started teaching in Atlanta. I was a science teacher in Clayton County Public Schools and in a very urban environment. I made my way back to the Commonwealth to become the principal of Ballard Memorial High School, and then had the lucky, distinct pleasure to come back home to Livingston County, where I grew up, and become the superintendent here. I have 7 children. One's an educator. My wife is an educator. She's also a nurse. And I am happy to be here today to speak about our great profession.
Well, wonderful. Welcome. A couple of things. I co-teach in science classes, so I'm glad to be on the screen with a science teacher. Not I'm trying to learn the science content. I will leave it at that. My teachers will giggle when they see this. And you're not the first person from the Army we've had on this show either. So we're excited about that. And there have been some comments in our live stream already thanking you for your service. So we appreciate that. All right, let's just go ahead and jump right into this. We're here tonight to talk about compensation for new teachers and teacher raises for those of us that have been in this profession for 1 year or 20 years or however many years, and why that's an important topic right now, and the work that you all are doing to help support us. So, Rhonda, I'm going to let you get started talking about a little bit of why you felt the need to lead this work as the executive director of KASA.
Thank you. So as I shared earlier, I work with school administrators, and school administrators are counselors to, by definition, counselor to superintendent. And what we know about schools, teachers are our number one ingredient for student success. And our principals cannot lead schools if they don't have teachers. And our school districts, regardless of what role someone plays, all of that work is centered around the student. We are student-centered in everything that we do. And our best success research shows us it's the classroom teacher. And I know everyone on this call is well aware that we have had a crisis nationwide, and our state of Kentucky has been hit really hard. Our average turnover for teachers right now is 20.9%. I'm sorry, 24.9%. It was 20.1. It actually increased by 5% in the last year. And when you dig down and look into the turnover numbers from district to district, school to school, you will see only a handful of school districts with turnover less than 10%. You will also see numbers as high as 50 and 60%. And so what we basically have happening is our schools are in a current and continuous state of turnover. So for our seasoned, our highly qualified teachers, they are now helping onboard everyone. At the same time, they're possibly working multiple jobs and trying to be prepared each and every day to take care of our students. So our seasoned teachers really making working conditions very difficult for them. At the same time, we're onboarding a lot of brand new teachers. Only a handful of them now have been through a traditional preparation program, and they themselves have a very great need for an onboarding experience. And in addition to that, we're also onboarding a lot of teachers who are coming to us by emergency certifications. They are coming to us by way of option programs. And they too, they are coming to us without pedagogy and without classroom management skills. So they need a different type of an onboarding experience. So teacher shortage, schools can't run without teachers. Kids certainly cannot learn without high quality classroom teachers in every single one of our schools.
No, absolutely agree with you 100%. I'm seeing that in the classroom myself. I see that through Kentucky Teachers of the Know with the comments and the questions and the messages I get daily, weekly. I would almost take a bet that, and I hate to even say it because it's terrifying to me, but that percentage of teachers not coming back in the turnover, I'm afraid may go up that 5% again, if not more, just from the comments and things I'm hearing from teachers. It's a very trying time. It's very frustrating. Our teachers do not feel that they're being shown their worth and their value. And I think that's an important thing we've got to address. With that said, David, as a superintendent, I know the last time that this came around with teacher raises and talking about the legislature that they really weren't talking about giving us funding for that, but they wanted to mandate raises through SEEK funding. And I know we're there again. And I know this time around, it's a little different message coming from a lot of superintendents and a lot more support and advocacy trying to help teachers get those raises. So can you talk to us a little bit about the difference and why we are where we are?
I can, but let me back up just a minute to one of the comments you just made about people even now putting in the comments about not coming back or perhaps not returning to our profession. I guess 23 years ago, let's say 22 years ago, I sat at an Olive Garden in near Atlanta, Georgia, and a great mentor of mine was sitting next to me, and I had decided not to come back to teach. I was a first-year teacher. It had been miserable. It was hard. I didn't feel I was supported, the way I should have been. I was kind of thrown to the wolves. I was an alt-cert teacher. I had no pedagogy to speak of. It was a miserable year for me. I had been very successful in my previous careers and came into this profession, and it was not what I was anticipating. It was hard. And Angel McCrary asked me, "Are you coming back next year?" And I said, "Angel, I'm not. I can't." And she said, "You've got to. You've got to give it one more year." And so I did, and then another year, and then another year, and then another year. I think I say that to say that you don't know what's around the corner. And sometimes we think, People need us. I needed this profession. And I stayed, and here I am today. I don't know how much influence I wield in this world, but I know I've had great mentors that have helped me have impact on students. So if you're one of those people and you're sitting here listening tonight, maybe you need the profession too, but maybe somebody needs you in our profession. So this isn't the time to quit, and it's not the time to stop. And I know there's a lot of adversarial things in the media at the national level, sometimes the state level, but this is a great profession. Now, I'm sorry, that's a soapbox, but it troubles me when I hear that. So I'll move into that question, or answering your question first.
David, that's okay. I'm going to interrupt you for just a second to respond to what you said.
Go ahead.
I'm constantly telling teachers that are saying, I don't think this is right. I don't think to try a different district. Try a different school within your district.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just the place and the timing, and sometimes there's another place that ends up being your home.
And those pieces just falling into place.
They do. I spent 20 years at our middle school, didn't think I would ever leave there, and jumped ship and spent a couple of years at elementary, and now I'm at the high school, and I absolutely love it. Didn't think I would ever say I love high school, but I do. So sometimes it's just finding your right place as well. So go ahead. I'm going to just add that.
Find great mentors. And finding great side mentors who can help guide you. Some of mine, I hope, are sitting on here tonight listening, and they've been very inspirational and helpful to me. I know some of my family members are. Lean on them to help you. But I'm going to answer your question that you asked. And maybe. I think for me, and I'm going to use this term, it's probably not the best term to use in education any longer, but there is a silver bullet to everything in education. I've said this for years, and I believe it. It hasn't changed over the past 20 years. The silver bullet to education is teachers. Teachers are the program. It's only through teachers that we get better in the education profession. We do it on their shoulders, and I would submit that sometimes we do it on the backs of teachers. I am not in a classroom influencing what's going on with students. My role is outside. So any achievement that we had is only going to come through those teachers. Great teachers make a difference. We know it, data supports it, but we all know it. So I think that that's a place to begin. Now I'm going to follow that up with the second part of that is we have to have strong leaders who are willing to make the right decisions for teachers and for our students, even when times are hard and they're difficult. So I don't know that there's been more of an emphasis by superintendents in the past year for advocating for teacher raises. What I do know is great leaders always advocate for people. They advocate for their personnel. Great leaders do two things. One, they can cast a vision that other people can follow. They've got to be able to do that. And then the second thing that all great leaders do is they hire and retain great people. So I think emphasizing personnel has always been something superintendents have done, but things have changed. So things have changed in our world in the past, I would say 4, maybe even 5 years. Things have changed. One thing we don't do well in education is we do not look at emerging trends. We tend to look at education and we look inward. We don't look at the trending markets. We don't look at the labor force. We don't look at those things. And then all of a sudden they creep up on us, and we've got an aging workforce. We know that the skilled trades are looking for people. The healthcare sector is looking for people. The airline, aviation sector, they're looking for people. You name it. The retail sector, they're looking for people, and everyone is upping the ante. So one thing that we've got to do better is look at those emerging trends. But I think that superintendents for sure have recognized, and going into this legislative cycle, that we've got to move the agenda forward with teacher raises. Now, I don't think it's just superintendents that are moving in that direction. I believe that legislators too also have the appetite for this. I believe we can hear it in what they say. I believe that they're trying to take steps to move that agenda forward. We heard it from the governor as well. So I think that all of those things coupled together have really united everyone around trying to figure out how to increase teacher pay. We're going to have to do it. The other markets, I'll go back to the skilled trades. They figured it out. They pay more. Medical field pays more. McDonald's paying more. Chick-fil-A paying more. Everyone's paying more. We're going to have to figure it out and pay attention to that.
Absolutely.
David, can you speak to the issue? Just a few hours ago, Governor Beshear actually shared pushing for that 11% increase in teacher pay. But of course, I think most of what he's speaking from is coming from legislative action. But we touched a little bit on SEEK funding. But he also pointed out in the majority of our counties, educators, public schools are the largest employer. So what's that really mean on a local budget as far as teacher increase if it's not being state funded? And does that have to be the source coming from the legislature?
Let me see if I'm getting your question right. There has to be an infusion of money from legislators. That has to happen. I don't think that local districts can bear the entire brunt of providing teacher raises. So yes, there has to be some infusion from the legislature in order to provide, I think, the size raise that we need. And the KASA work, we had two asks that were big asks. One was a 10% raise for teachers across the state. That was all teachers. And I'm going to back up and speak to that in just a second. And then the 45% starting teacher salary to move to $50,000 in the next biennium. But a 10% teacher raise for all teachers in the state, that's a big ask, but it's a doable ask. But money would have to come from the legislators to do that.
Can either of you speak to the knowledge and understanding and help our educators understand how that funding should come from the legislature, how it could come from the legislature, and how that is different looking for our local districts? So for instance, if they fund this 10% raise through SEEK formula, how does that affect our local district and how does that look? And is what they're proposing or have proposed in the past through SEEK funding actually doable to be able to give teacher raises? So explain how that works so that our people can understand the difference in them just handing out money and mandating a certain percentage for teacher raises versus putting more into SEEK funding.
And I think that this is the difficult part of all of this, is how do you fund teacher raises? And there are different thoughts amongst superintendents, teachers, educators as a whole, legislators. It's a difficult conversation. I'm going to tell you, as I speak, surely someone is going to get offended by what I say. I'm all right with that. I won't shy away from it. I'll go back to, again, the big thing for me is our ask was a 10% raise for all teachers in the state. And I'm going to clarify that was teachers from Livingston County to Adair County to Fayette County to Jefferson County to Crittenden County to Ballard County, all districts across the state. I believe teachers should see that 10% increase. It doesn't matter where you are. The difficult part about SEEK is SEEK funding is given, first, remember, it's given to provide some equity in educational funding across the state. And any funds that go directly into SEEK, that's a positive, right? I think we can all agree any infusion into the SEEK formula is positive. Through SEEK, the base formula, transportation, tier 1, those are positive things. But what I think is hard for people to understand is that if there's let's say that there's just a 10% overall infusion into SEEK, a 10% increase, not 4, not 5, not 1, but a 10% increase, that does not look like it matriculates down to each district as 10%. And then in Livingston County, my teachers automatically get a 10% raise. Remember, SEEK funding is for everything: instructional supplies, custodial supplies. If there's new legislative mandates, if there's a new district initiative, it's all coming out of SEEK. It's important to remember that districts' funding is made up of two sources, basically, and that's local revenue and state revenue. So that differs by district. And so when money is infused into the SEEK formula, it comes out in different amounts. I can speak to my district. I'm sorry, Rhonda. I can speak to my district. I hate to, because I don't want to sound like I'm advocating just for Livingston County schools. That's not who I am. But I am a hold harmless district. I am a property rich district. And so I am a hold harmless district, although I have a declining student body, and this is not a wealthy area. We have quite a bit of real estate. Being hold harmless, if there's additional money that come into SEEK, I get 0% increase. So we're held at the 91-92 funding number of, I think it's $2,650 off the top of my head. So that would not look like an increase for my teachers. My increase would need to come from local revenues and what I could do within the district. I can speak to my friends in Ballard County who are almost the inverse of how we receive funding. For roughly 70-30, with 70 coming from our local revenue. They're the opposite. So he'll get a larger amount of the SEEK dollars by percentage. However, he has a decreasing student body population. So right now, you got to figure out operationally, how do you continue? It's feasible that he could take all of that money and put it into operations. That's a possibility, but it looks different for every district across the state. Sorry, Rhonda.
That's okay. I just wanted to expand the conversation statewide. We actually surveyed when House Bill 6, the budget bill, came out. We surveyed all of our districts across the state with superintendents or finance officers responding. 96 responded, and over 54% of them said at best, once the funds trickled down into the SEEK formula, a raise of 0 to up to 2%. And when we consider our lowest paid teacher in the state, around $33,000, and the fact that the Policy Institute has set a living minimum wage for the state of Kentucky at $49,000 for one child, one adult, we can see that 1%, 2% is not going to move the needle at all on a minimum living wage for our teachers here in Kentucky. And from that same survey, so 54% said 0, 1, or 2%, and 34% of those leaders said a 2 to 3% raise. And that the way they get there is to take every bit of funding that they are given. So they may be taking the general SEEK funding, in addition to that, possibly transportation funds. At the same time, they have a really long list of daily operational costs that they have to, figure out how to cover within these SEEK funds. So the entire state is struggling with the current budget proposal that is out there. And when we consider the landscape, if we talk about the Tennessee-Kentucky border, what we know right now is the state of Tennessee has moved its starting salary to $50,000. Now it's a 3 to 4 year plan before they actually get there. But if you talk with our superintendent in Whitley County or our superintendent in Christian County, they will both tell you that they already cannot recruit even their own teachers that they have grown through various as we would refer to as a homegrown program. So their own students that they've been recruiting and developing along the way now are having to say no to them because they already make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 more just by driving across the state line. And at the same time, if we move on to Indiana, the state of Indiana, its average teacher salary is being moved upwards to $60,000. And they too are working on not only starting teacher pay, but all teacher salaries across the board. And for years, we've talked about the Cincinnati area, and we've used a number of $10,000. And so we can look at all of our state borders. Everyone is struggling with the same challenges around recruitment. It's like any profession, whoever pays more, that's who's going to get our teachers. And we have the same challenge within our own internally from district to district. So if you consider our larger districts who can currently pay more, I think Fayette County or Jefferson County would be great examples. And if you look at whether it's Clark County, even my own community of Boyle County, a teacher who is willing to drive a little bit can make significantly more income to be able to live, to have a competitive wage. And so, but at the end of it, what we know is that every single student should have access to a high quality classroom teacher. And our current pay is not going to get us there.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rhonda. That actually gives us a good pivot point because we could probably talk pay for a couple more hours, especially as much as it means in that. But But one of the things you talked about, you mentioned surveys. And so I want to switch to some other survey data that KASA has. You talked about the difficulty in teachers leaving for other states or districts, but then we also know that you have some data around teachers leaving the profession altogether. We touched on that at the beginning. What can you tell us about the data you've collected related to professionals leaving the profession altogether?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's a good time to mention the Coalition to Sustain the Education Profession. And that has been an 18-month project of singularly looking at the teacher shortage, the crisis, and what's the solution. And part of that work, it did focus on recruitment, retention, and marketing. And the group is comprised of 150 stakeholders, business leaders, corporate leaders, legislators, and of course, educators, and various agencies that support public education connected to it in some manner. And I do think it's important to note that over 30 teachers are serving on the coalition. But from that, working conditions is a very important part of that work. And during the last summer, EKU, along with two of our superintendents, Carrie Ballinger from Rockcastle County and Tom Cochran from Johnson County, led a survey of which 8,800 of our Kentucky teachers responded to. And the number one reason for dissatisfaction is pay. And the number two reason is student behavior. And the third one is time and teacher allocation. And, pay, we've already talked about that. I know everyone on this call understands that the challenges behind pay. It is important to note that our average starting teacher pay is only at $38,000, so well below that 49. And our average teacher salary is at $55,000. And that's down from $60,000, showing that more and more of our folks have resigned. The actual salaries are higher, but we have more and more teachers now on the less experienced side. But the second, if you stop to consider the student behavior, that begins to really show up when we start to consider that many of our teachers are coming to the classroom without pedagogy, without classroom management skills. And it really speaks to what the ability of a high quality classroom teacher can change and resolve almost every challenge that we have in schools today. And that third item, just speaking briefly to it, time, the time teacher allocation, that is simply a matter of all of the extra duties or volunteer hours that we ask our teachers to put in to help make schools work and to take care of children.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that we could discuss around all of this. Our teachers and educators and even our bus drivers and cooks, people are struggling to make ends meet in every direction that we look. I know, David, you can probably speak to this. I find it as a teacher in my school and, of course, as a teacher leader across the state that I hear more and more just teachers feeling beat down and just lacking the enthusiasm to be where they are and wanting to understand more about why they're being asked to do more for less. And it feels like the morale is just going down across the board. And I find it hard sometimes. Like you, David, I want to scream from the rooftops, don't give up. Let's keep going because, I still have children in this game and I still have, hope to have grandchildren someday. And I want them to have the best of the best teachers. And I worry about how not having the best educators will impact the learning of our students and the future of our state, the economics and the workforce and all of those things. So, it all impacts everything. But how do you as a superintendent see that all of this is impacting the morale and the culture within your schools? And what do you hear from other superintendents as well? And what can we do about that?
Great question. I think first I'd like to start with, I have a great school district. And I have a wonderful group of teachers who come daily and they bolster our profession. But I think as a leader, it's my job to ensure that that's happening. And it's my job to cast the appropriate vision and to keep us on track. With all the distractors around us, I've got to keep a positive focus on what we're doing. I think that has got to be a number one job of all superintendents in the state. It's tough right now, but I don't think it's just in our industry. I think this is in multiple industries. I'm not going to reach back 3-4 years ago and talk about what's occurred, but post what has occurred, people have had to redefine their purpose. And some people didn't have a purpose when we went through some pretty troubling times, and they were lost. Mm-hmm. I believe that we're seeing the results of some of that in our nation, in our state, in our profession. And so as a leader, it is your job to cast hope. I think that's the number one job of a leader, is to ensure that there's hope. But to remind people that hope is not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy task to fix. We've seen an influx of wellness issues, physical, mental, that teachers are now dealing with. So just keeping that vision in front of them and reminding them why we do what we do, but tending to their needs, being attentive. I think that you'll look in the workforce. The workforce wants leaders that are responsive to their needs and listening to what those are as they shift and as they change. People want mobility. They do want a hybrid working environment. They do want a better health and wellness plan. So we've got to be looking at those things and talking to teachers, making sure we're having dialogue with them. I believe that that's important.
No, I agree. And I like what you said, to make sure we're having dialogue with them. I'm a big advocate of don't make decisions about us without us at any level, in any position, anywhere, but we should definitely have a voice and be heard. And I think that's some of what people are experiencing right now and expressing, is that they feel like they're not heard, whether it be the legislature or their colleagues or their administrators or whoever. So that's definitely a challenge. And I like that you said your number one job as a leader is to cast hope. I think that's a quote that we should share widely, because I think that right now that's what we need, is a lot of hope. People are losing that. And that makes me, as a 24-year educator and the daughter of an educator, very sad, because this profession, I needed this profession. This profession is me. I can't see myself doing anything other than being a teacher. It is who I am. Inside and out. So I do fight for it, because I want it to be the best that it can be. So with that said, what can we as educators, as teachers, as anyone within our school system, and either of you can respond to this, or both of you, hopefully, what can we do to help advocate for that raise, so that, since that is the number one thing that teachers are saying is what they need to be able to stay in this profession, what can we do?
Our voices are important first. Mm-hmm. I also have the pleasure to serve on the Board of Regents for Murray State University. And last year was our 100th year of being an institution. So that's a huge benchmark. But I'll remind everyone of this. Murray State University started out as a teacher college. The area was rural. It was cut off from the rest of Kentucky. It was difficult to get to Murray. And the institution was formed. From that, it's come in engineering school, nursing school, business school, college of agriculture, and it's grown tremendously. But it would not have happened without there being a teacher college first, and those first teachers educating everyone in this region and making it possible for people to come and to learn at the institution other things than just education. So I believe we need to carry that message and that positive message. I'm also a believer in this. There has to be a return on the investment. So that's not always popular either. When we're given something, there needs to be a return on the investment. I believe that we've got to be attentive to that, because the world around us looks at that. They want us to be positive. Our parents do not want to hear all of us complaining. No parent wants to hear the superintendent go on Facebook, which I don't do. This is an exception, or YouTube or Instagram or wherever I'm comfortable, and talk about how rough my day was as a superintendent. To be frank, this is a great job. It's warm here, or it's cool here. I'm not taking enemy fire. This is a good place to be. But I have to remind myself of that when things get hard, when things get difficult, and carrying that message, but also ensuring that we're doing the advocating appropriately and across the state and outside of our state.
Absolutely. Rhonda, would you like to add to that?
I would like to add to that. I think it's important to remember that our legislators, the job is complex, and they have so many asks in front of them in terms of meeting the needs of all of our society statewide, and they have this one pot of funding that needs to be distributed. And there's a lot of good legislation that they put forward and pass, and that's already evident in this session in terms of working to better support public education and some aspect of it, but especially teachers. And so I always want to remind not only myself, but anytime I get the opportunity to remind all of our constituents that it is important to remember the positives, and it is important to say thank you for their work and for their leadership. But I also think it's very important to ensure that our legislators, my legislators, that I am meeting with them and I'm talking with them, not just during session, but all year long, to help them understand what it looks like to be a teacher today, what it looks like to be a principal today. I'm the mother of a special education teacher, and I'm watching that very, very closely and living that through her eyes and her life. And it is difficult, and I don't know that she will make it to the 10-year mark. And when I talk about her story to my legislator, I can begin to see the understanding begins to occur. And I believe that that's one of the biggest gaps that we have, is understanding, watching it from the sidelines versus understanding. And I think that the most important connection that we need to make everyone make right now is that high quality classroom teacher is the one who teaches our children to read, the one who teaches our children math concepts, and the ones who keeps us to be, or helps us to be, a good human in the world. Mm-hmm. And we, as educators, we go to our legislators with so many needs. And what happens is we begin to just keep putting Band-Aids, so many Band-Aids to buy us a little bit more time or to perhaps move us forward. But it always circles back to they are just Band-Aids. And it's really time to, if we are serious about educating our children and ensuring that they achieve, that they read at high levels, grade level, higher levels, it is time to make the connection for it requires a gifted, talented, highly skilled classroom teacher to make that happen. And we cannot make that happen if we are not willing to pay teachers in the profession a competitive living wage, like the states around us and like the school districts who can do it. With Fayette County at 50,000, they actually moved to 50,000 this year. And what we need to do is get all of the rest of our state. The recommendation from the coalition, number one, is to move all teachers who are making less than $45,000 to $45,000. That takes $29 million to do that. But the second part of the recommendation is to ensure that all other teachers receive 5% this biennium and a second 5% the next biennium. And that in this biennium, we need a total of $130 million to move all teachers to those levels. And so talk with your legislators, make sure they understand what it takes to be a high quality teacher in the classroom today, and that we have to pay teachers to be willing to, number one, be recruited into the profession, but most importantly, the amazing teachers who are there, we need to keep them there.
Absolutely.
Allison, we drop that in the chat there. If you don't know who your legislature is, your friends and family don't know who your legislature is, simply Google Kentucky, find my legislature. That'll pull up the LRC map. You literally click where you are at on the map and you'll get your senator. and your rep. They have a bio page, what committees they're on. Communications, relationships are critically important. It's easy to step back and say they never listen to us, but I've had a lot of conversations with legislators that they open their eyes and say, I didn't know that. And so sometimes we assume they know and just acting in our, not in our best interest, but sometimes we just need to do our part to do that as well. So I literally just came back from DC last week, doing some advocacy for health and PE on the national level, but lots of things here in Kentucky that we have to do as well for that. Speaking of, there's been several questions about current legislation. One of the current ones is around reducing the number of hours for substitute. Is that just the reality of where we're at, or is that when I know there's a lot of things, some gets traction, some don't? Any thoughts on that and the repercussions of that? And then any other legislation that you want to speak of that, again, we're in that place, a lot of things impending and a lot of things are in different committees. What do you have your eyes on for either one of you?
Go ahead, Rhonda.
David, I actually felt like I had spoken so much that it should be your turn.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. There are a lot of pending pieces of legislation. And as you said, it is important to be aware of those and to track them. I can't give you the top three, that are of concern to me right now, because I have focused a lot of my time, energy, and effort on this one and on the budget. So that one is a very important one to me. I haven't read the legislation on reducing the number of hours for substitute teachers, but no, I mean, this is a dire thing in our district right now. Substitute bus drivers, substitute teachers, substitute cafeteria workers. But, when you have to have a certain number of hours to be a substitute in the classroom, that's a little bigger ask than some of the others. Or bus driver, you have to have the license to do the work. So anytime that we have to reduce the qualifications to do a job, I believe we have to be careful of the unintended consequences. I haven't read the legislation. I don't know how much it reduces it by. We sit every Monday in a principals meeting and try to think of how do we solve the complex problems that we're dealing with for the day. And that, those are all great problems. And that's what our job is as leaders. If those problems were already solved, there would be no need for me or my leadership team. So I welcome those, but substitutes are one of those. I think about alternate certifications as we have more and more options, trying to figure out how do we do this. I worry about the missteps as we do that. And I was an alt-cert teacher. So alt-cert teachers, shout out to all of you for coming to the profession just like me and earning our keep. But we have to be careful as we take on new options, or as we change the qualifications to do anything. I'm not saying any of those pieces of legislation are wrong, but it needs to be done with full thought of what are the unintended consequences.
What I might add to the conversation, we're just now at the halfway mark of the 60-day session. And there are bills that are making their way through. I believe that once we reach that 60-day mark, there will be we'll be nearing the 2,000 mark in terms of bills that have been filed, or at least bill numbers that have been requested. And the coalition work has also taken most of my attention on behalf of KASA. And there are 17 recommendations from that work, with the number one being centered around pay. But within those recommendations, we are seeing some legislation, one that would actually offer a stipend to student teachers. That amount is $5,000. There's another that addresses student loan forgiveness. I think that we'll see bills like that make their way through. But the most important bill is going to be one that's connected to the budget, that provides us the salaries that we need to have the right teachers in the classroom. Seth Faulkner, a principal at the Mason County High School, he is featured in a documentary that you can find at KASA's website, and that is kasa.org. There's actually a link from the homepage about the coalition work. It'll take you straight to a toolkit with a lot of resources in terms of the surveys that we've spoken about, the 64-page report of the recommendations from the coalition and this documentary. And Seth is the principal in the documentary. And he makes this statement that resonates with me and lingers. And basically he says, if we want teachers to take care of our students, we have to take care of our teachers. And that's where we're at in society today. And our legislature, the last few years, they have addressed salaries around state troopers. They've also addressed the nursing shortage. And so when we look at strengthening society, really focusing on workforce development, because that's what this is. The work is workforce development, not only from the lens of, Allison, you said it best earlier, oftentimes the school community is the largest employer in the school. And so not only is that obviously paychecks, but those paychecks they just multiply in terms of community prosperity, whether it's the local Valvoline shop or the hair salon, the tanning beds, the grocery store, whatever it is, those are all locally owned businesses that are frequented not only by our education workforce, but also all of our retired teachers. And that's something else that's important to note. Whenever our teachers receive an increase in salary, 5%, our teachers work 3 to 5 years longer. And that does two things for us. One, it provides a better living wage, obviously, for our teachers. It also strengthens the retirement system a little bit more. But most importantly, it keeps our teachers working 3 to 5 years longer. And so there's a lot packed into that workforce development. And I couldn't end this part of the conversation without saying, most importantly, in this workforce development conversation, every single teacher is developing the future workforce, that next generation of workers. And they are, you are delivering the best of humanity. So I'll park it there.
I think that's an excellent place to park that. I want to add, of course, with the work that I do, I hear from teachers constantly, and in our group, Kentucky Teachers in the Know, recently we've been getting a lot of comments and posts that we've approved about teachers that are struggling. And some of those stories are very heartfelt, heart-wrenching, I think is maybe even a better word, when a teacher, whether they're a single teacher or married to another teacher and have children that can't pay their rent each month and are having to decide which bills that they're going to pay so that they can put food on the table for their children. One of the first ones that we got was from a teacher who told me, we often as teachers know that the meals we have at school are the only meals that their students sometimes have. But when a teacher lets you know that those are the only meals they're able to eat because they don't have any food at home because they can't afford that by the time they've paid their bills, for whatever reason, life circumstances have happened. Just because we're all teachers doesn't mean that our lives are the same. Things happen in people's worlds that can impact that, like, sicknesses and things and medical bills that happen, divorces, those kind of things. So I think it's important that we realize that, when I started teaching many years ago, I knew I wasn't getting in this profession to become rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt like I was going to have a very normal, comfortable life as an educator. We're seeing new teachers come into this realizing they're not going to be able to make it with the way that the cost of living has increased, the cost of groceries. When I reach out to ask some of our teachers to go to conferences and do things in my local district, I have new teachers tell me they can't go unless the gas is going to be paid for because they can't afford the gas to Lexington to a conference. And that's not okay in our world of educators. Like you said, Rhonda, these are the people that are preparing every single person and profession for our state, for our local communities. And we should be holding those people up and providing them with enough to be able to have a comfortable life. We're not asking for any riches or golds or treasures by any stretch, but enough to be able to be comfortable and feel like if we want to drive to Lexington one day from Moorhead, Kentucky, that's perfectly doable and not something we should be concerned or worried about. Some of the things that I think our educators need to do in the next few weeks, since we are at that middle point, Send those emails. I know we say sometimes that it feels like that's just the same old thing over and over again, but often I know Rhonda and I've talked about it when she meets with the legislators, they'll say, oh, I haven't heard from anyone. And Jamie alluded to that, though, they don't always know everything that we think they know. So we got to make sure that they do understand it. And when you email them, I think it's very important to share your story, to share why it's important that we pay our educators, and not just say that we need to be paid more, but why. What are we asked to do every day? I saw a meme earlier, and I'm always getting on to people not to share memes on social media like they're the gospel. But this one it really hit home with me, because I thought this is so true. It was written from the perspective of a parent who had gone to her child's kindergarten class for a Valentine's Day party or whatever. And she had basically said, I witnessed a teacher today handing out candy, teaching a lesson, cleaning up vomit, using a translator on her phone to speak 3 different languages to different children in her classroom, while all the time also wiping noses and making sure children had what they needed and sharpening pencils. And she was like, please pay them everything, give them all the money. And I wanted to praise that, because that it's so accurate. We often forget that all the things that educators and everyone in our schools are tasked to do. And so many times people out there in our world just say, please just go teach. That's your job. Don't worry about everything else. Just go teach. I think what it means to just go teach has changed. And I think that's what people who have not stepped foot in a classroom for many years don't quite understand, is that just go teach does not look like it did many years ago. Some other things I know Rhonda and I have talked about, and we've tried to get people to make some little short video clips that we can share with people that tells their story and tells why it's great to be an educator and what the job entails. So if anybody out there is willing to do that, please message me and I will get you that information. If you don't know who your legislator is, Jamie gave you that information to find them. If you need more help with that, please let us know. Another opportunity, I know with the Kentucky Education Association, we have what we call Days of Learning. And that's an opportunity where you get to go to Frankfort and you meet your legislators. You get to sit in an education committee meeting. That was my first chance many years ago, was the day that I just thought, oh, wow, I did not quite understand how education policy was impacting my job to the level that it is. So if you get a chance to do one of those, that's another opportunity I can think of off the top of my head that is really impactful, and it gives you that opportunity to share your story while you're there with people. Anything else that we can do to help you? If you don't know who your person is to figure out when your day of learning is, let me know. I can do that for you. Rhonda and David, thank you so much for being here tonight. Any parting words, any last things that either one of you would like to share with us?
I do think you should go first this time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jamie and Allison, for having us on the program today. And I just want to reiterate that this is the greatest profession of all. It is the profession that influences all others. We have the chance to change people's hearts, their minds, and I'm proud to stand here as an educator in the Commonwealth and across the nation. And I'm appreciative to our teacher workforce. And I just encourage them. And I hope that I've given a little hope today to someone to stay in our profession. But again, thank you. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you for being here. Rhonda?
I do think it's important to note that Dr. David Meinschein is the co-chair, along with Terry Morgan, the superintendent of the Hardin County schools. They have been leading the coalition to sustain the education profession. And I'm very grateful to both of them, because the work hasn't been easy. I'm reminded of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is an inspirational quote to me for this day. And it is the one about stand up for what's right, but do lead in a manner that it brings everyone together. And that's the heart of the definition of leadership. And so as educators, if we can come together as a family and take this first best step around teacher salaries together, because we truly can't solve all of the challenges that we have at once, but this first best step of salaries, and communicate that to our legislators in the right manner. I think that they are ready to make something happen for us, and they are working really hard to sort through the budget issues and come up with a solution. And finally, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Allison. It's my first time to be on this, so thank you for having me.
Rhonda, your dog may have heard that Allison's dog's quite famous for joining the show. So that might, your dog is just trying to join the famous dogs out there of teachers that know. So, so not a problem at all. But
Thank you for that.
No, not
Thank
a
you for the
problem. I'm
grace.
shocked mine didn't join us tonight. Normally she's sitting on my lap. So
Well, thank you for the grace. Benny is struggling to be left out of the limelight tonight.
that's okay. We love the fur babies around here for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for being with us tonight. And thank you to our audience for joining in. If anyone has any questions or further comments or wants to get involved in this work, please reach out to Jamie or I and let us know. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.